untold Appalachian mist, there is one place so avoided, so dreaded, that even seasoned hunters refuse to cross its borders. Locals whisper the name with a shiver, Harlow Hollow. To step there is to vanish, to become part of a story that should never be told. Yet, buried in old county archives and police reports too disturbing to be dismissed, there lies the trail of a family so grotesque, so inhuman, that their name alone has become a curse. This is the nightmare of the Harlow family. The first hint of their existence comes not from folklore, but from a desperate police call made in 1973. A pair of hikers reported screams echoing through the forest, describing a sound not quite human, but not animal either. When deputies followed the trail, they found something almost worse than a body, torn scraps of clothing nailed into trees, as though someone had marked territory using pieces of their victims. The officers refused to continue. And so, the Harlow story sank back into silence. But silence never lasts in Appalachia. Not when something hungers. The Harlow line began in isolation, generations before modern roads reached those mountains. Cut off from the world, their family intermarried, not out of preference, but because no outsiders were ever welcome. Their bodies twisted over time. But what disturbed neighbors even more was how they lived, never seen in daylight, always lurking by firelight. Some claimed their eyes reflected like a wolf's, glowing unnaturally in the dark. Others swore the Harlows howled in the woods at night, luring lost travelers deeper with voices that mimicked crying children. Imagine the horror, walking a forest path, hearing what sounds like a little girl sobbing for help. You follow the voice, desperate to save her, only to realize too late that the cries are wrong, warped, too perfect. By then, the Harlows are already behind you. Old census documents list the family, but their numbers were inconsistent. A household of 6, recorded in 1922, became 13 in 1934, then dropped to 5 in 1940, with no record of where the others went. Yet locals kept reporting livestock vanishing, hunters disappearing, and half-eaten carcasses of deer, sometimes arranged almost ritualistically, left at the edge of town. The implication was chilling. The missing weren't missing at all. They had been consumed. One deputy, in a report that was later buried, described stumbling across a Harlow dwelling. It wasn't a house in the traditional sense. It was a half-sunken structure, built into the earth, its roof sagging under decades of decay. Inside, he found bones stacked like firewood, jars of cloudy liquid with shapes floating inside, and a crude cradle made of barbed wire. He claimed he saw a figure, impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed bent at the wrong angles. But when backup arrived, the structure was gone, as if swallowed by the ground. It's here where the line between legend and nightmare blurs. Did the Harlows truly live in tunnels beneath the hollow, dragging their prey underground? Some believe the family had long since abandoned any need for sunlight, becoming pale, eyeless horrors that relied on sound and smell alone. Others think they made a pact, not just surviving in isolation, but thriving by offering flesh, their own and others, to something older that lives beneath Appalachia itself. The deeper you look, the more unsettling the details become. Every generation of Harlows seemed more inhuman than the last. Faces distorted, jaws jutting unnaturally, teeth sharpened with crude files. They no longer resembled a family. They were a hive, moving together, feeding together, and worse, they bred for survival. Their children born into darkness, trained not to speak, but to listen, to hunt, to consume. And yet, the most disturbing detail isn't what the Harlows did to outsiders. It's what they did to each other. One story, pieced together from a survivor's testimony in the late 80s, describes a man named Henry. He was a drifter, looking for work, who claimed to have been captured and held inside what he called the pit. He said the Harlows forced their youngest to feed first, teaching them that family blood tasted sweeter than any stranger's. He swore he watched as siblings turned on siblings, the weakest consumed by the stronger, until only the fiercest endured. His account was dismissed as insanity, but his scars, deep gouges across his shoulders and neck, told a different story. Still, why hasn't the Harlow been purged, burned to the ground, or sealed off forever? Some say attempts were made, fires set, raids carried out, explosives detonated. Yet every time, the land reclaims itself. Structures vanish, trails disappear, and those who try to hunt the Harlows often don't come back. If they do, they're broken, whispering of things that crawl just out of sight, watching, waiting. So, the question becomes, were the Harlows truly a cursed bloodline, or have they become something much worse? Something no longer human, but not quite beast. Something that thrives on the fear their legend creates, knowing the bravest among us will eventually come looking, and never leave. This is only the beginning of the nightmare, because the Harlow doesn't just consume people. It consumes time, memory, and sanity itself. And if you think you know horror in Appalachia, the Harlows are here to show you just how wrong you are. Asterisk. Take the case of Rachel Denning, a school teacher who vanished in 1991 while hiking near the edge of Harlow Hollow. 4 weeks, search parties combed the ridges, finding nothing but animal tracks and shredded cloth. Then, nearly 3 months later, Rachel staggered into town barefoot, emaciated, and covered in grime. She spoke only once about what she had endured, and her words sent chills through every investigator in the room. They kept me underground. They whispered in my ears while I slept, and when I woke up, there were more of them than before. I don't think they're all Harlow. I think some of them used to be like me. Her words hinted something even darker, that the Harlows don't just feast on outsiders. They transform them. Locals have long whispered about rituals in the Hollow. Strange fires seen burning at impossible hours. The sound of drums thudding through the forest, so low you feel it in your ribs, more than hear it. Hunters described stumbling across strange arrangements of bones tied together in the shapes of crude figures. But Rachel's testimony was different. She spoke of being forced into ceremonies where the Harlows bled into the earth, offering their own flesh as a sacrifice. She claimed that each time they did this, something stirred below the ground. Something massive. Something breathing. Investigators dismissed this as trauma-fueled hallucination. Yet the land itself supports her claims. Seismologists in the early 2000s detected unusual subterranean tremors near Harlow Hollow, rhythmic, localized, and not tied to mining or natural causes. The ground, it seems, was moving. But perhaps the most chilling stories don't come from survivors, but from those who only barely escaped. One hunter, Darren Ross, reported being tracked for hours through the hollow. He said he first noticed it when he realized the forest had gone silent. No birds, no crickets, no wind. Then he heard breathing. Heavy, rasping breathing. He ran, but each time he stopped to rest, the sound was closer. At one point, he swore he saw eyes not 2, but 6, glowing faintly from the trees. When he fired his rifle, the forest erupted in screeches. Dozens of voices layered on top of each other, all too high-pitched, all too human. He never returned to the hollow again. Darren wasn't alone. Multiple accounts mention the same unsettling detail. The Harlows don't hunt alone. They stalk as a group, but not in the way wolves do. They move silently, almost unnaturally in sync, as if guided by one mind. Those who claim to have seen them up close describe bodies that don't seem to work like ours. Limbs too long, spines hunched and crooked, skin stretched thin, veined with sickly blues and purples. And always, that same grotesque smile, mouths too wide, teeth sharpened, lips split from years of tearing flesh. And yet, as monstrous as their appearance has become, the worst part is the sound. Survivors often describe laughter echoing through the hollow. Not joyous laughter, but the kind that cracks wheezes and carries mockery in its tone. A chorus of voices, some childlike, some guttural, all blending into a nightmare that seeps into your bones. Researchers trying to trace the family tree of the Harlows often stop halfway. Records vanish, bloodlines blur, but one genealogist noted something odd. The Harlows are always connected to disappearances. A census marker for a new Harlow coincides with a missing person from a nearby town. And in time, that new Harlow seems to vanish into the hollow, absorbed by the family. Were these kidnapped children raised as their own? Or were they transformed into something else entirely? Rachel Denning's words echo here again. I don't think they're all Harlows. One story from 2006 chills even further. A group of amateur ghost hunters entered Harlow Hollow, live streaming their exploration. For the first hour, the video is uneventful. Creaking trees, distant owls, nervous laughter. Then, midway through, the audio picks up faint whispering. At first, it seems like wind, but as it grows louder, viewers swore they could make out phrases. Stay with us. Stay forever. Minutes later, the camera shakes violently, the stream cutting out with a scream. Authorities searched the area, but found nothing. The three explorers were never seen again. To this day, clips of their final moments resurface online, fueling the legend of the Hollow. It would be easy to dismiss all of this as urban legend, a patchwork of but the land refuses to be ignored. Harlow Hollow has a reputation not just for disappearances, but for erasing those who try to erase it. Firefighters once set controlled burns to clear the area, but days later, the flames were found mysteriously extinguished, leaving behind nothing but blackened earth and footprints leading away. The tracks weren't human, nor were they animal, so what exactly keeps the Harlows alive? Is it simple cannibalism? Or is it something much worse? A pact with whatever ancient force breathes beneath their hollow? The stories suggest they feed not just on flesh, but on fear, luring outsiders into their nightmare, consuming their essence as much as their bodies. And if that's true, then every story we tell about them only feeds their legend, and maybe feeds them to dot, because here's the most disturbing possibility. The Harlows want us to talk about them. They want us to remember. They want their name whispered in fear. Because every whisper makes them stronger. Which raises one final question. If you're listening to this now, if the name Harlow has crossed your lips, have you already given them a way to find you? Asterisk by now, the Harlows have stopped being just a story. They are a riddle carved into the Appalachian landscape, a festering scar that refuses to heal. Chapter 1 revealed their grotesque origin. Chapter 2 showed us how their hunger spread like a curse. But here, in the final descent, we uncover why no one, not even the government, dares to touch Harlow Hollow. The first clue comes from declassified files, dated 1958, marked with the seal of the Appalachian Development Commission. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary infrastructure report, but hidden among maps and soil studies was a field note written by an anonymous agent. This area is compromised. Inhabitants not suitable for relocation. Termination protocols failed. Recommend containment over eradication. What could possibly make an entire federal unit fail to clear a hollow? Whispers from retired military personnel suggest that in the late 50s, a covert team entered the hollow with orders to neutralize its residents. The unit never reported back. When backup arrived weeks later, they found only abandoned equipment, helmets caved in, weapons twisted, as if bent by enormous force. The forest floor was littered with drag marks, as though bodies had been hauled into the earth. Officially, the mission was erased. Unofficially, the survivors who peeked at the classified report swore it was the Harlows who fought back. But the most terrifying detail, the mission log didn't count how many Harlows there were. It simply said, too many. It wasn't just their numbers. It was their terrain. Harlow Hollow isn't mapped like other places. Every survey ends differently. Trails shift. Streams appear where no streams should be. Caves lead nowhere, or worse, loop back into themselves. It's as if the land bends around the family, protecting them. Some researchers theorize the Harlows know underground passageways that outsiders can't comprehend. Others whisper that the Hollow itself is alive, a sentient, breathing organism, and the Harlows are its offspring. This might explain why the few survivors often report losing time in the Hollow. Hours vanish, days collapse into minutes, watches stop working, compasses spin aimlessly, and by the time they emerge, if they emerge, they are never the same again. Take the 2003 incident of the Carter brothers, two spelunkers who thought the Harlow Hollow caves were just another expedition. Only one of them returned. He claimed he and his brother heard chanting in the dark, but couldn't tell where it was coming from. The echoes grew louder, until it felt like dozens of voices surrounded them. Then, lights appeared, faint, flickering, like lanterns. But when they approached, the lights weren't lanterns at all. They were eyes. Rows upon rows of glowing eyes. His brother screamed, and in seconds, he was gone, dragged into the dark. The survivor was found days later on a roadside, clothes shredded, his hair turned completely white. He died in a psychiatric ward a year later, mumbling one phrase over and over: "They're under the ground. They never stop eating." The evidence piles higher. A 2011 thermal scan of the Hollow revealed heat signatures inconsistent with wildlife. Human-like, but wrong clusters of moving figures, some larger than any man should be. Attempts to capture the data were mysteriously corrupted. When the team returned to rescan, their equipment had vanished overnight. All that was left were dozens of crude wooden effigies placed in a circle. Watching the road, locals believe the Harlows don't just kill to feed, they kill to keep the Hollow theirs. Each scream, each death, is an offering that binds the land to them, and maybe that's why attempts to wipe them out have failed. You can't kill what the mountain itself protects, but there's a deeper horror hidden in the whispers. The Harlows are not dying out. They are multiplying. The survivor accounts, the heat scans, the military files all suggest their numbers are growing, generation by generation, fed by outsiders who vanish into the Hollow and never return. Some are eaten, some, perhaps, are changed. Rachel Denning's chilling words echo again. I don't think they're all Harlows. If she was right, the Hollow may be a factory churning outsiders into something else, something monstrous, a cycle of abduction, ritual, and transformation that ensures the Harlows are never just a family, but an ever-expanding legion. And if the Hollow is indeed alive, if the land itself feeds on fear and flesh, then the Harlows are merely its instruments, tools to keep the cycle alive, puppets of something older, something beneath Appalachia that no one dares name. So where does this leave us? Standing at the edge of Harlow Hollow, staring into the fog, wondering if the stories are true, wondering if the laughter drifting through the trees is just the wind, or if the Harlows are still there, smiling in the dark, waiting for you to take that one step too far. And maybe that's the real nightmare, not knowing whether the Harlows are human, inbred cannibals clinging to survival, or something far worse, birthed from the Hollow itself, eternal and unstoppable. Because either way, if you enter their world, you will not leave the same dot. So if you ever find yourself near the old roads of Appalachia, and you hear a cry that sounds just a little too human, or laughter echoing where no one should be, run. Don't look back. Don't even breathe. Because once the Harlows notice you, there is no escape. Asterisk, and that, my friends, is the nightmare of the Harlows, a family so grotesque that even the mountains themselves seem to protect them. Maybe they're still out there, watching from the shadows of their Hollow, waiting for the next traveler who dares to cross their cursed ground. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Are the Harlows just an isolated, twisted bloodline? Or have they become something far worse, something the earth itself refuses to let die? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one. And if you thought this story was disturbing, just wait. The next family we uncover isn't hidden deep in the mountains. Their horror spilled into nearby towns, leaving behind scars that still haunt Appalachia today. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and join me for the next descent into the darkness. Because in Appalachia, legends aren't just stories, they're warnings, and ignoring them could be the last mistake you ever make.